actually, I wanted to show you something else I forgot to do in the first session. I talked about sheet metal and some of the new enhancements in sheet metal. So let me just quickly dive into that. So the new thing, nice new thing inside sheet metal now is the new seam option. Okay, so if I go and create a flat wall along this edge, and if you look closely, you can see how there's also some interaction there with the adjacent walls. Okay, so pretty obvious with the color change there. So the idea is now that it creates a seam automatically. Okay, so you can turn that off if you want. I'm using the graphics toolbar. So the old default behavior would have been to get to some geometry look like that. Okay, just put a rip in there. Okay, so the new seam option is essentially interacting with any adjacent side walls to create that little seam that closes up that gap for you. Okay, so that seam, as you can see, it interacts, so the side wall geometry is affected by the geometry of the flat wall that you're creating as I change the angle around. Okay, I have the option, if I want to, of editing that seam. Okay, so I could say that it should be, the default is open. Maybe I want to put a gap in there, or I can define a distance between them, which is just the straight line distance. Or maybe I could define a blind, so I can define my sort of X and Y directions for that gap. Or maybe I could say I want them to overlap. Okay, so I want to extend that wall out, or maybe it's that wall should be extended out to overlap between the two. Okay, this is all stuff you could do in earlier versions of Creo. There's just a little bit of fiddling around to get to that point. Okay, I had to do open sketches and things like that. Okay, so it's now much simpler to create those kinds of interactions. So you can see I've been using the graphics toolbar. Okay, sorry, the new feature toolbar. So I want to do my corner relief. So again, I can change that. Maybe let's say I want to put in a circular cutout in there, or maybe I want to put in an ob round. Okay, so you can still go up to the dashboard if you want. There's my bend relief, there's my corner relief. Change all of those settings, do them however I want. Okay, but just the new graphics toolbar there inside Creo 6 makes that a lot easier to get to. Okay, so that's a little quick look at the new seam option with sheet metal walls. Okay, so I know lots of people do sheet metal, and it's a nice new option there. All right, so let's move on to the second session on the Creo and talk a bit more. Okay, so before I dive off into updates, I just want to, I guess, take a step back and talk about packaging. Okay, so as you all probably know, Creo or PTC software from the start of this year is now only available on subscription. Okay, so some of you have perpetual licenses, some of you have subscription-only licenses, some of you have a mix of the two, depending on what you bought. But any new licenses going forward will be subscription. So PTC likes to do sometimes. Okay, just be careful, Alan's not here. There's been a bit of restructuring of that packaging. Okay, so with the new subscription bundles, that's sort of been rejigged around a little bit. So I guess there's a lot more stuff now in the packages. Okay, so the new base levels, we call them the design essentials. Okay, so that includes all your core modeling, sheet metal, all that sort of stuff. The AR, which we talked about. Some other stuff that includes now, so linear structural analysis, so a bit of entry-level Creo simulation. Not the simulation live that we showed, that's something separate. Okay, it gives you the advanced framework and intelligent fastener extension. The human factors library, Kasia talked about how Talus is using that. Piping and cabling, design exploration extension, a bunch of other things like some of the SolidWorks collaboration extensions, the Render Studio, things like that as well. Okay, so it's a rebundling of, that's the new base level. Next level up is the design advanced, which includes all of those things, plus also the entry level machining, so that's your prismatic and multi-surface milling, so essentially your 3-axis milling, as well as the advanced assembly extension if you're doing sort of top-down design tools, skeletons, publish job, copy jobs, those kinds of features. Okay, and the option of PDM as well. Okay, moving beyond that, there's a Design Advanced Plus, which then has everything of that, plus the starting point for additive manufacturing, lets you creating lattices and things like that, which we're going to talk about later on this morning. The surfacing design through the ISDX module, a lot of the analysis tools like behavioral modeling for geometry optimization, mechanism dynamics for adding forces into your mechanism designs, tolerance, GD&T, and also some of the tooling design options as well. Okay. And then beyond that, we can start to add more on top of them. So again, more collaboration options, full Creo simulation, some fatigue, flow, GD&T, more GD&T, production machining now, so we're getting into 4-axis plus a bit of turning and the like, NC sheet metal, full MathCAD, and then the Design Premium Plus, which includes everything plus full simulation, full machining, so all the way up to 5-axis, the full flow analysis, topology optimization, which I'm also going to talk about in the next session, added manufacturing plus, which is giving you support for metal printing and the options for that, as well as a few more machining options. Okay, so that's the new sort of restructuring. Obviously, if there's particular modules there you want, you can still get them, a la carte on top of a base license. I'm sure Paul and Rod will be more than happy to talk to you about any questions you might have on that.
This GD&T Advisor Plus, does it manage assembly? So it's just limited to parts.
I need to check on that. Cash. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think so, but I need to double check. Okay. All right. So the other part on the subscription side, okay, what's included with subscription, and also some other changes here that might affect some of you. So subscription licenses include e-learning, okay. So if you're buying a floating license, you get 3 e-learning licenses. If you buy a no-lock, you get 1 e-learning. The other big change is to the way that those e-learning licenses can be used. Okay, so the e-learning licenses is online PTC-based training for their tools. So they used to be, in a way they still are named user, right? So if I had, in this example here, I had 15 e-learning, 15 people could log on and use that e-learning, right? So you want to log on with a named user because obviously you can track what classes you've done, all that sort of stuff. But it was named user, so that was yours basically until you left the company, sort of thing. Okay. So now they've made those e-learning more flexible. So essentially, it's if you've got 15 e-learning, 15 different people can log in any one month to do e-learning. Okay. And then the next month it resets, so another 15 people could log in and do e-learning. Okay. So there's a little bit more flexibility there into how you use your e-learning licenses. Okay, to do online training. The other thing that the subscription packages include is a home use license. Okay, so again, for a floating you get 2, for a no-lock you get 1. So essentially this gives you the entry-level Creo Design Essentials, okay, license, which is basically you're allowed to install on non-company PCs. Okay, so if you want to install it on your home computer because you want to do some practice, if you need to do work from home, if you're building a new design for the back deck or something like that, okay, that you want to use Creo for, then that's what the home use license can be used for as well. Okay, so I know Ben's helped quite a few customers get them set up for home use. Okay, all right. All the normal support things, the support tools, everything else, obviously access to us, and I mean, big acknowledgement for Ben. I mean, I'm sure plenty of you have talked to Ben on the phone. If you've never met him before, he's lurking up the back there, so you can say good day. Okay. So he's our primary support person. I'm sure many of you have dealt with him in the past. Performance advisor as well, okay, for all of the sort of online tools for monitoring what you've been doing, how much you're using your license, what features you're using, and also on the license borrowing side as well. So subscription licenses can be borrowed for up to 180 days as well. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit of an overview on some of the changes with subscription. Okay. Let's get back into some of the productivity improvements inside Creo 6. Okay, so a lot of things on a lot of the modules, and as I said before, that a lot of these modules are now included in the base package. So Advanced Framework Extension, so AFX. So AFX Lite has been included for a long time, since I think Wi-Fi 5, I think was included, but you're limited, the number of beams connections you could do. So full AFX is included in the new base package. That had a big overhaul with Creo 5, okay, reskinned, a whole bunch of new options inside there. In Creo 6, the enhancements around things like better management of your customizations. So we've got some customers who've gone off and customized the library to add their own profiles and connections in that they want. So basically to make that easy to manage and store and not overwrite when you do upgrades and the like. New project verification dialog boxes to make sure you're not, overdoing joints on the same profile. One of the big ones is references on the fly. So the way that, for those of you who haven't used it before, AFX is basically for placing structural steel frameworks. So the idea is I build up a a skeleton, if you like, of curves and points and surfaces of planes. And I can quickly run different profiles, define joints between them, make them all match up, and it's a really, really fast way of doing structural steel work. Okay, so if you start on the process of creating a beam, and then you want to, I want to go from this point to, and then you go, oh, I've got a point here, but I don't have a reference there that I can pick. You kind of have to cancel out the process, put the reference in, start it again. Okay, so now I can create a reference on the fly, just like you do in Sketch when you create a reference on the fly that way. Okay. The other one as well is that the mini toolbar, okay, the left button mini toolbar, you now add AFX commands into that. So they're not on by default, okay? You need to add them in by customizing, which is very simple, just drag and drop. But if you are doing a lot of AFX work, then you might want to add those into the mini toolbar, okay? If you're actually doing a lot of AFX stuff, all right? Intelligent Fastener Extension, or IFX. So again, there's been a light version of this included, I think, back since Creo 3, okay? So this is essentially for placing fasteners really quickly, okay? So IFX, again, the commands, you can add them into the mini toolbar. You can now choose your hole chart you want to use. There's some new reference checking for existing fasteners. So just to, I guess, show what IFX is about, so let's go and grab the chassis here and open that up. All right, so I see a lot of companies, a lot of customers, they don't put their fasteners in, right? Because it's too much time and effort. There's loads and loads of them to go in. So what happens is you've got to model all these holes everywhere, and then someone has to go and look at the drawing and count all the holes and type that into an Excel spreadsheet and work out quantities and things like that. So that causes problems. We don't get an accurate mass. All those sorts of issues can start to come up. Okay, and that's usually because it takes a lot of time to put all those fasteners in. So the Intelligent Fastener Extension is really designed to help you do that really quickly, okay? So as an example here, I've got a couple of holes here already, but these need to be bolted together, okay? So let's put a fastener in here. So I'll say it's going to go in here from this top surface to that bottom surface, okay? So the two point towards each other, so it knows it's going to be a bolted connection. If it was two surfaces pointing in the same direction, that would be a screw connection, so it's going to drill a tapped hole into the bottom, okay? So I'll locate that. And it brings up a little 2D diagram based on bits of geometry, so it knows what I'm going through there from the top to the bottom. Okay, so I've got all my catalog. Okay, so this is just the standard out of the box PTC library of parts. Okay, so I might choose an ISO fastener. I can choose which particular type I want. So let's say a button pan head. Let's do a hex socket. Okay, we'll size it based on that hole. So that's going to give us an M5. We can choose, whether we want washers, what sort of nut we want from, again, our standards there, like so. And that's going to, and we can see a preview of what that's going to look like as we go through changing all of those options, okay? I've also got my options here for, so in this particular case, the holes are already there, but I could just pick a point or an axis or just do a mouse click, and that will automatically create both those holes for me, okay? Drill all the holes, do all that stuff, do the tapping if I'm doing a tapped hole for a screw connection. I've got options here for whether I'm going to put a counter bore in or not, although my geometry is a bit thin for that, and I'm just doing some sheet metal. So I can go through all of those options there. Okay, I'll OK that. Now it picks up the fact that that was a pattern, so it's going to put on all of the instances of that. Okay, so there's my fasteners done. Okay, so in that case there was 2, so it did 2. If there was 50, it would have done all 50. Right. So IFX has been available since Creo 3. So any Creo user has IFX Lite. Okay, so you can do most of what I did there. In Lite, you can't do the patterning. It doesn't auto protect the pattern and do it all for you. You'd have to sort of go back later and manually pattern it. And also with IFX Lite, you can't customize the library. Okay, so we've got some customers who have or want to put in their own custom libraries of screws. Okay, because this is just using the standard PTC libraries that you get. So a lot of customers, they wanted to put their own parameters in and other properties, or they might have their own libraries of screws where they model all the threads and everything else like that. Okay, so with full IFX, you can do all of that. Add that into the library, and off you go. Okay, so it's a tool to make adding your fasteners in much quicker and more efficient. Okay, all right. Cabling design. Pardon me. So the piping cabling extension, as I said before, now included in the base package. So piping got a really big overhaul in Creo 5, a whole bunch of stuff added in there. In Creo 6, there's a couple of little things done on the cabling side. In Creo 5, the main thing was the support of more color options for defining the differences between your cables. So we could start to add stripes and other patterns to help us more clearly identify wires. In Creo 6, a few little things around basically little identification tags that you put on your cables. All right. So making that much easier, just put those identifying markers on your wires and cables. Okay. Design exploration extension. So again, this is another thing that's now included in the base. So DEX was introduced back in Creo 3. Okay. So design exploration extension is a utility to let you explore design alternatives. Okay. So the idea is I've got a design here. Maybe I want to add these features to it to go off down this path, right? But then you get to that path, you go, well, actually, maybe I should have done something different. So I want to go back and go down a different path, right? So generally what happens in that situation is, you get to that point, you go, well, I need to keep that model. So I might do a file, save a backup copy into a folder, call it alternative 1, and I'll go back and try another one. I get this massive models all over the place. It becomes a big mess to manage and look after. So DEX is really a tool to let you snapshot as you go through your design process and jump backwards and forwards between those different snapshots quickly and easily. Okay. So inside Creo 6, DEX has added basically more support for more modes of Creo. So we can use DEX with print tray assemblies, we can use them with interchange assemblies if you're looking at automatically swapping out different parts between each other, and also routed systems, so piping, cabling modules as well. Okay. Render Studio, okay. So, so back in Creo 4, I think, PDC changed over the rendering engine that they use in the advanced rendering extension from Mental Ray to Keyshot. So Leap also sells Keyshot. Jackie's up the back there giving a wave. So those of you who bought Keyshot from us, I'm sure you probably dealt with Jackie. Okay, so we do also sell Keyshot, so it's nice that PDC and Keyshot work together in that way. What they've added in Render Studio now is a couple of options. So when you output a mechanism animation, so if I can hopefully that keeps going. When I do my mechanism animations to work out things like motion envelopes or interferences, I'll create my animations inside Creo. You can export them out to a movie. You do have the option of doing a full ray tracing render when you export that movie, so you've got a photorealistic looking result. So you can use the Render Studio for doing that output. Okay. And also now we support emissive appearances inside Creo. So that's Keyshot technology to basically self-illuminating materials, so it gives you more realistic lighting effects and things like that. Okay. All right. Subtractive manufacturing. Okay. So a few little things in there. Those of you who are doing any sort of subtractive stuff, I'm sure you've dealt with Taji before. He's our manufacturing guru who doesn't seem to be in the room at the moment. Okay. Oh, there he is, lurking around outside. Okay. So Taji is our man for any sort of machining stuff. If you want to talk about that, but a couple of little things introduced inside Creo 6. A few more options for turning, dealing with turning profiles and thread turning, and some new options for depth hole making drilling sequences. Okay. So Creo flow analysis. So that was introduced back in Creo 5. Okay. Using Symerics. So a couple of new options for that. A new wizard for defining your flow analysis setup. And the big one, which I got actually asked quite a bit about, is the ability to take that pressure loading from your flow and take those results into Creo Simulate to do a structural analysis based on the pressure load caused by the flow. Okay. So Creo Simulate. So getting into, I guess, some of the other Creo apps in the suite now. So Creo Simulate, a couple little changes here. Some options around viewing results of dynamic frequency analysis. And also when we're working with the lattice features, which we're going to talk about in the next section on additive manufacturing. So support now for thermal effects with some of these 2.5D lattices when you take them into Creo Simulate. Okay. All right. And Creo Illustrate. So the other one in the package, because I know we've got a few customers here in the room who are using Illustrate. Okay. So Creo Illustrate, like Creo View, which Kasia talked about using this morning. So they're on a slightly different release timeline to Creo Parametric. So they're basically synced up with Windchill releases. Okay. So when we talked about Creo 5 last year, we had Creo Illustrate 5, Creo View 5 were just about to come out. They basically get released about June timeframe. Okay, that was with Windchill 11.1 and 10. Since then, we've had Illustrate 5.1, and we're looking at seeing Creo Illustrate 6 released with Windchill 11.2 next week, I've been told. So we'll see if they make that release date. So so right now, the current release is Creo View 5.1. Okay. So PTC have a couple of technical illustration tools in their bag of tricks. A product called Architect's IsoDraw, which has been around a long time. And Architect's IsoDraw is essentially a 2D drawing package for doing technical illustrations, isometric drawing package. Very commonly used in defense and aerospace. All of the customers that I deal with who use IsoDraw are in those industries. It's pretty much, talking to technical illustrators, pretty much the standard used right throughout Europe for doing any kind of technical documentation, or technical illustrations, I should say. And primarily when you're starting from scratch. Okay, it does have some options to bring in 3D CAD data, but at its heart, it's a 2D drawing package. Okay, so PTC launched Creo Illustrate back in 2011 with the launch of Creo, and it's a tool for creating technical illustrations from 3D data. Okay, so I know Mike from NXP is going to talk a little bit about Creo Illustrate later on this morning. Okay, but one of the things is that on the roadmap is that PTC is going to replace IsoDraw with Illustrate. Okay, so part of that is to bring in 2D authoring tools into Illustrate. So that's been happening through the life of 5 and 5.1. So the introduction, the ability to create new 2D figures, and the ability to start drawing lines and scaling and doing a bit of editing in 2D, as opposed to what a lot of customers do, where they take the illustration outside to something like Corel or Illustrator and start doing it in that way. So we do a little bit more work inside Illustrator with less requirements to move outside. Okay, and some options for snapping and constraining that geometry as you're sketching it. Okay. The other big part, and I'm probably going to talk about this afternoon, on the service side, AR is a big part of PTC's message on that, how we improve service performance. So a lot of the precursor to that, there was questions asked before about animations. If I want to show an animation inside AR, how do I do that? So really the tool, depending on the type of animation you're trying to create, is to use Creo Illustrate and use the sequencing tool inside that. So those of you who saw the engine example that Clayton showed, the supercharger outside, those animations were all created inside Creo Illustrate. Okay, so there's been a bunch of enhancements done for that to help better capture the type of movement that you might want to show. So the unscrew effect, a lot more options for that. Options for showing the left and right-handed screws. And also the ability to show, to bring in more complicated motion paths. Okay, so we can bring in FRA files. So FRA files, I was talking before, where you can create a mechanism animation inside Creo. Okay, so I can define all of my joints and motors and define a range of movement and run that as a study. So typically that's done to look at interference through the range of motion, or maybe exploit out a motion envelope to give you a geometry to make sure you're not interfering with anything else. Okay, so those FRA files, we can bring them into Creo Illustrate as well. So that can help when we're trying to define a sequence that might have some, or maybe trying to explain to someone how does this piece of equipment look when it's operating, so you can define a much more complicated motion than just simple rotation or linear movement. Okay, so we've got something like a connecting rod there joined on an offset on a crankshaft to show that kind of movement. So we can bring those animations you can create inside Creo Parametric and use that data inside Illustrate to help describe that kind of motion. Okay. The other one as well is support for IPS files. So this is a third-party tool from a European company, IPS Path Planner. So it's a tool for manufacturers to take their 3D CAD data and help them work out assembly or service information. So the idea is, I have this filter here. When I'm putting this tractor together, I need to get it and stick it down inside the engine. How do I get it through all the bits that are there in place and get my tools in place to be able to put it together? Okay. So IPS Path Planner is designed to help you work out those sort of complex 3D paths to get something into the right spot or pull it out from the spot. Okay. So Creo Illustrate can read in the path that defines, and then we can use that to show how do you pull this apart or how do you put it together. And then again, we could take that into AR to show an overlay in the real world. This is where you should move that part to get it into the right position. Okay. So that's some few little updates there on the Creo Illustrate side of things as well. Okay. So that's what I want to go through on Creo 6 updates. I know there's a lot of things I covered. So as I said this morning, if you want to know more, Creo help.ptc.com. The first thing there, you can't read on the screen, is what's new in Creo Parametric 6.0.0.0. Okay. There's a whole bunch of topics in there that go through all of the new enhancements inside Creo Parametric 6. Okay, so examples, pictures there. You can see this particular example. This is talking about the new option for sheet metal walls. Okay, with the seam. So that also has a link off to Learning Connector. Sorry, where you can see videos that explain that and run through a little video demonstration of that. We can go straight to Learning Connector and filter for Creo 6 as well. And for those of you who have e-learning, then also there is Creo 6 update training available in PTCU. Okay, so lots of options there to find out more. All right, so that's a little bit of an overview on what's new in Creo 6. Okay, lots of goodies in there.